Hello everyone, it's David again. Babylon 5, Season 1, Episode 17, Legacies. Now, this one kind of sets the stage for further episodes. So little bits here and there are going to start peeling off and forming other episodes. Starts off with the Shy Elite, which, from what I can tell, an elite is like a great Minbari commander, or as the commander of a Minbari vessel. The Shy Elite must be their supreme commander, sort of like our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, his body's been put on display, and so everywhere this ship goes, Minbari are supposed to come out and pay their respects. Well, for some odd reason, this war cruiser decides, let's go visit Babylon5, a human station, even though there are Minbari on board. To me, it just smacks of, wrong place, wrong time. I mean, even though it has been 10 years. Of course, as soon as the Shy Elite's body, he was put on a war cruiser, and it comes right through the jump point. And of course, Sinclair immediately has a flashback to the Battle of the Line. And as happenstance would have it, the gun ports are open, which is exactly what happens, for those of you who don't remember, back to the Minbari's first contact with humans. Well, without orders from Dukat, they come in with gun ports open. They show it or see it as a sign of respect, that we come and see that they have no harm. Well, back then the human sensors weren't so finely attuned to whether the targeting systems were activated. So Delenn comes along and says, you'll see their targeting systems are activated, and sure enough, CNC confirms that and says, while this cruiser is alongside Babylon 5, they will comply with your orders to keep the gun ports closed. So, evidently Delenn pulled her muscle as Satai and told them to mind their manners, basically. So, we flash back and forth. We see Talia Winters spying up Ivanova at a restaurant. Not quite sure what her intentions are at this point, but you also will notice that builds on towards other things that may or may not have happened. We'll see in later episodes between Talia and Ivanova. We flash outside to a thief. This little pickpocket steals a necklace and tries to run away from the shop owner. All of a sudden, she's stopped dead in her tracks. She grabs her head screaming and falls to the ground. Well, Talia Winters immediately knows what's happened and rushes over and says, get Dr. Franken quickly, she's taken a mind burst. So, we cue the entrance. A gentleman named Neroon, I need to highlight that because I forgot to in my notes, he makes his first appearance. And when Delenn goes along and they're talking about, this kind of weird that this Minbari ship would come by with its gun ports open, well, Delenn says, don't you have anything similar like the riderless horse or the missing plane formation? And she said, it's really nothing more than that. Well, of course, those who don't know, back in the day, of course, like I alluded to earlier, that's how the first war happened. The other Earth ship that was coming along didn't realize that this targeting sensors weren't active because their sensors were completely overwhelmed by the Minbari cruiser. And in typical fashion, they panicked and opened fire on the Minbari cruiser, hence leading to the direct cause of the Earth-Minbari war. But that's old history by about this time. Michael Garibaldi and Sinclair meet up with the cortege, and we flip on back to elite not Elise, no, Elisa, the name of the young girl who took the mind burst. She looks to be about heading into puberty, and Talia Winters explains that sometimes puberty can cause the onset of telepathic abilities. And Dr. Franklin likened it to if a deaf person could suddenly hear and a rocket engine went off in their head. And she said, exactly. And she says also that some telepaths are born with the senses active. And so they know from an early age how to turn them on and shut them off. Whereas other kids, like this Elisa Belden, will find out her name later is, they end up having to all of a sudden learn this sort of stuff running as they, go through puberty. So, we can kind of guess a little bit what Dr. Franklin, his little comparison is. When you see those, especially with what we call cochlear implants in the medical profession, where we implant them and formerly deaf people can all of a sudden hear. You'll see usually it's something pleasant like their husband for the first time, or their mother for the first time, or their baby child for the first time. Usually it's not quite like a rocket ship going off in their head. So immediately, of course, we know Ivanova is a latent telepath who has no love lost for the Psychor. So immediately you see Ivanova and Talia arguing over who gets custody of Elisa Belden. Ivanova wants custody of her because she committed a crime. In reality, she's using that as an excuse to buy time. We go back and we learn that this Bremler dude, who is the head of the Minbari, or the Shai Elite as they call him, he led the attack on the Battle of the Line, and of course Sinclair's having a hard time forgetting that, wondering if Neroon didn't set that up. We learned that the Star Riders clan was insisting on displaying his body, and that Delenn doesn't like it. Well, she says, my preferences aren't open for discussion, blows off Commander Sinclair in Samaro fashion, and ends up trying to go and attend to the body. Now, at this point in time, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back. Of course, I'm sure I've mentioned 1,000 times, I used to be a registered nurse. All nurses are required to take psych nursing training. We also know now that the actor Michael O'Hare suffered from severe psychiatric illnesses. And we really start to see in his face and in his acting, really, especially so in this episode, he seems to be suffering the ravages of his mental illness. Now, he's told J. Michael Straczynski that he was to keep this secret to his death, and he thought he meant literally my death. He said, well, sure, yeah, I'll keep your secret. He said, no, I want you to keep it to my death. In other words, I'm going to die soon. Some people tend to have that premonition. I've seen it in the hospital. And when I die, I want the people to know why I had to quit Babylon5 so early. And so, keep my secret for as long as I'm alive, but as soon as I, go off and become the, join the great sky beings or whatever it is you wish to believe, or heaven or hell, or any of that sort of thing. Once I pass away, go ahead and tell people what really happened behind the scenes. And so we now know that that is what happened. As they're doing a little flag folding from the coffin. It kind of reminded me, my dad was a Korean War veteran, and it reminded me a little bit of the flag ceremony that they did, the veterans did, when they folded up the flag and gave it to my mother. However, much to everybody's shock and surprise, the Shai Elite's body is missing. Whoa, that's kind of freaky. Who would go steal a Minbari body, especially a Minbari war leader's body? Well, of course, you can understand Neroon, the head of the clan, or one of the heads of the clan, I guess, is kind of foaming at the mouth now. And he's trying to literally, at one point he says, I'll have to let my ship assume the task of taking the ship apart if it means finding his body. Well, to me it seems like Neroon is bordering on the if only I were in control, the last war would have ended much differently. I was about 3 when the Vietnam War ended, and I saw a lot of that, especially in the 1980s with the Rambo films and stuff like that, how people would have said, yeah, we should have nuked them in Hanoi, or we should have sent the armored marching columns down, you know, their main streets of Haiphong, or things of that nature. If I would have been in control, things would have ended much differently. Now, of course, here we are in 2021 in the United States, and are we going to be, and we can already see it, if only I were in charge, things would have ended much differently in Kabul. And of course, we're going to have to let history play itself out to see how well that argument holds up. Switching on back to Sinclair is having a hard time dealing with this body thing. Ivanova comes in, gives him a little bit of a rundown as to what's going on with this Elisa Belden. And Sinclair says, you know, I'll try and back you whatever you do. Okay? So, as we learn that the Shialit was a great general. He was a high priest of the religious clan before then. And the holy war against the humans, the holy war against the humans caused him to switch from the religious to the military caste. And we also learned that the religious caste ordered an end to the war, and then that later has started a rift. Now we'll learn that it starts a rift between the religious, the military, and the workers' caste. But at this point, I think we're still operating under the two-caste system that I mentioned in a previous episode that Lanier talks about. We flip on over, and Ivanova has a little heart with Elisa about what happened to her mother. And Elisa says, yeah, I kind of figured that's what happened. You know, because I can't control my abilities yet, I read your mind while you weren't, you know, paying attention, kind of a thing. Which is interesting because you can, you know, later on when Ivanova admits that she is a latent telepath, says she can tell when someone is scanning her. So, but then again, you run into a whole bunch of instances where she's been scanned. So is she just going to play dumb for the rest of her life, or what? You know, it makes you wonder sometimes after the episode, or Babylon 5 series concludes, and before like the Rangers series starts, does she develop her telepathic abilities at all? And I would like to hear people's comments in the comments section about that. Do you think Ivanova ever develops herself as a telepath? So, because I think she said also at one point, she's probably not even a P1. But that's enough for them to... So they must have very low standards to get into Psychor. If you don't even have to rate a P1, and they'll try and drag you in. Jumping on over to the Carrion Eaters, as the Garibaldi and Neroon actually confront a Pakmara over a partial burial robe of elites, the Shai elites that they found outside of his quarters. And so Michael Garibaldi insists they all have their stomachs pumped. Now, does that mean there's multiple Pakmaras, or does that mean a Pakmara has multiple stomachs? I could lean towards either or because I know there are, like, birds and deer and cattle have multiple stomachs, not just one like us humans. So, and of course, this Pakmara kind of rears its head back, and eventually later, Franklin does pump the stomach of a Pakmara, and he learns that they ate something, it just wasn't Minbari. And then he quips a joke, you know what they say Narn tastes like? And Michael rolls his eyeballs and says, tastes like chicken. And for those of you who are not Americans and don't understand, in the United States, when you're asked to describe any sort of a dish, we always say, well, it tastes a lot like chicken. And it's just kind of a canned response you might hear. We jump on over, and the Toth is making an offer to Elisa, who scans her, and she said, oh, she's just, rolls over in her, she's so scary because it's cold and it's alien. It's like, lady, you scanned an alien. Of course it's going to be different than yours. So kind of a humanocentric point of view, don't you think? You're on a space station, and all of a sudden you can scan people, and all of a sudden now they're alien to you. Oh gee, shock, surprise. After a little bit of further testing, we don't know what, we learned that Elisa has a high P10 rating, maybe even higher, assuming when she gets back to Earth, if she undergoes the Psychor drill, she may even be a P11, I guess, which I'm not sure what that would make her, but there you go. Since we know all P12s are Psychops and all P10s are Academy professors. So, she goes on over and interviews Delenn about her psi ability. Among the Minbari, psi ability is a gift, and you repay people's psi ability by making sure their needs are met. Kind of like, to me, a Buddhist monk is. In a traditional Buddhist society, a monk would go in and give you a teaching at the end. If you think the monk's teaching is worth something, you would give them some rice or some bread or some raisins, or you would do something of that nature. It's only when it's westernized that we really found that the gift of food and things like that, because now we've got like the Food and Drug Administration and all that sort of thing wandering around making sure that you're cooking your food to the proper temperature. Well, all of a sudden that's not handy anymore, so now we give them this thing called money. And that's kind of what I took away from this little thing here about the Minbari, that it's somewhat along those lines. Well, Elisa, of course, not controlling her abilities very well, briefly scans Delenn. Now, Delenn is somehow able to hide it after a very brief cursory scan. Wonder how she learned that trick, if that was taught to her in ambassador school or what happened. But she finds out that Delenn is responsible for stealing the Shy Elite's body. And then she ends up telling Sinclair that Delenn knows what's going on. Delenn says that a rift has developed between the religious and warrior caste. It started on the day that the warriors were ordered to stop the war with Earth. And she could have believed that she could have explained it away by him transmorgifying his body into a holy angel, that he had become this angel and floated up to the stars. Well, of course, Neroon's not gonna buy that argument. And she's like, well, sorry, but yes, he is. Because, and she pulls Neroon aside in his private quarters and said, look, he's religious caste by right of his mother and warrior by right of his father. You know which takes precedence. So heavily implying that the mother's clan, in a mixed marriage, a mother's clan is the one that takes priority over what other affiliations you might have. So a little tidbit of Minbari culture there. She basically orders Neroon to end this display and apologize to Sinclair by direct order of the Great Council, speaking as one of the Setai. You know, it's where she's kind of used her trump card and say, you will behave yourself and you will do exactly as you're told. And he does go and apologize to Sinclair about trying to order his big old Minbari ship to take apart Babylon 5. And so Sinclair says that among our people, one of the highest orders of praise is if you send praise to your enemy's people, I guess. So if he was to send on praise to the Minbari government, would that make Neroon happy? And he's like, you know, you talk like a Minbari. Perhaps there was some wisdom in letting your species survive. Heavily memmed. And he goes, yeah, we'd like to think so, too. So, winds on up. Elisa decides to go to Minbar. Talia ends up buying Ivanova a cup of coffee because she has to go on duty in a half an hour. And we see the beginnings of a budding friendship, maybe more ship. Before Elisa boards her Minbari transport, he asks her about, did she scan Delenn, or when she scanned Delenn, did she get any other little tidbits of information? And she said, yeah, just one word, chrysalis, but I don't know what it means. And he said, well, it's something that a cocoon that moths enter before they become butterflies. And she goes, I don't know what it means. And he's saying, no, I don't know either. But we will find out that that takes on a tremendous amount of importance towards the end of Season 1, beginning of Season 2. Anyways, as always, comment, like, and subscribe. I hope you all have a good rest of your day.